Hello, in this video I'm going to tell you why a narcissist craves absolute control over everything and everyone in their life. And along the way I'm going to give you a couple of examples from my own life on when my ex-partner, who I see as a narcissist, tried to control things in our relationships. I'm going to give you a couple examples along the way. If we're just meeting, my name is Tamara and I'm your courtroom companion. I like to say I come alongside you virtually to heal from narcissistic abuse or from a long custody battle, and so that you can build your life back bigger and better. So that's my passion. That's why I have this channel. So one of the reasons why narcissists need to control is because they see every interaction with another human being as a win-lose scenario, and they are determined to win at all costs. That's one of the main reasons they need to control, because they are not going to lose, or they see it as a lose. So narcissists become narcissists because of their screwed up childhood, and so they likely had very little say in their everyday life. They probably were told what to eat, what to wear. They were probably abused themselves. Their own interests were likely suffocated, especially if they had a narcissistic parent. Their likes and dislikes were ignored, likely, if they are narcissists. So they weren't permitted to be their authentic selves. And so they grew up putting on an act. And so when they become adults, they are, basically trying to control others in the way that they were controlled as a kid. And that's how they see relationships. And that narcissist does not want to be in the same situation that they were in as a child. And so they approach interactions with human beings as a win-lose scenario. So deferring to someone else's interests and desires is just not part of how the narcissists behave in relationships. Their other people's interests and desires are to be suffocated as theirs were suffocated as a kid. And they likely see someone else's interests or someone else's, good fortune as some kind of slight against them, and they see it as a lose. And that other person as a win, they're winning over the narcissist, and that doesn't set right with a narcissist. Negotiation is a foreign concept to a narcissist. So if they are in a relationship with a wife, for example, that wife's interest and desires are always going to be squashed, because there's only room for the narcissist, feelings in the scenario. There's not going to be this negotiation or, where do you want to go on vacation? I don't know. Where do you want to go on vacation? The narcissist will tell you where you're going on vacation. That's just how they are, because interacting with a person in a negotiation sense, he's going to see that as a win-lose scenario. The narcissist will stop at nothing to win, whereas most normal people don't approach, relationships in that way. And most of us have a set of values or principles that we live by on how to treat people, but that's not what a narcissist does. The narcissist doesn't care how they treat people. So winning at all costs is what's most important, not how you treat the other person. So that's the first thing. That's the reason they need to control, is because they see every scenario as a win-lose. Here's an example from my own life. So our son was in sports for years, and sometimes the equipment that he used would be in my car or my ex's car. And there was a time when I realized that I had one of the football jerseys that he was going to need that day. So I said, hey, I noticed I have the football jersey. How about if we meet at the, the Giant near you? At such and such a time. And I remember it was like a 4:30. That, for some reason, that sticks in my head. I say, I'll meet you there at 4:30. And he would write back and say, nope, I can meet you there at 4:45. Like anything I ever said like that, in that scenario, that happened many times, by the way, it would always be 15 minutes later or 15 minutes early. He would never go with what I said, because that again is like a win-lose scenario. I suggested 4:30, he suggested 4:45, he won. That's how he sees it, is he won if we go at 4:45, and if we go at 4:30, then he loses, right? So that's how he sees it, and it's absolute control. Another example in this area, if I need to swap a weekend for whatever reason, I can't just swap a weekend, because for some reason that he sees that as a win-lose. He has to swap the weekend and get more time. It's got to be I've got to swap the weekend and I've got to give him a major holiday, or I've got to, give him, an extra week. It's always extra, because it's not just, hey, I'm giving her what she needs because she needs to swap a weekend. He sees that as win-lose. So the only way he feels like he wins is if he gets extra. That's happened so many times. The second reason why a narcissist needs to control is because a narcissist is always in manipulation mode for his whatever he needs next. So he's got to control things because he's setting up something for the future. Narcissists use people. That's what they do. Even their children, they see them as extra appendages. They don't see their children as like separate human beings. So they see relationships as a means to an end, that they're going to get something out of that next person. An example could be that the narcissist is seeking out his next girlfriend while he has the current girlfriend. And so he's figuring out who he can schmooze right now. But he's always setting up something for the future. He's always manipulating for the future. If he's interacting with people right now, it's because he sees a reason why he needs them in the future. As an example, the narcissist could be seeking out people in a church. He might specifically go to church just to meet new people that he can maybe use as character witnesses in his custody battle later. He's always setting up for the next thing. So he's trying to control people for setting up for the next thing. He's always in manipulation mode for the future. Reason number 3 that they need to control people is because they have fragile egos. They have very, very low self-esteem and fragile egos, and so they need to control others in order to gain self-esteem. So if they're controlling other people, somehow that gives them a boost in self-esteem that they desperately need. On one hand, a narcissist views themselves as special and superior and the center of the whole world. But then on the other hand, they're very fragile. They have very low self-esteem. And so there's this contradiction. And so they feel like if they can control other people, somehow they are the center of the world again. Narcissists also believe that they are the smartest people in the room. They believe that they know how to lead things. They know they're smarter than everybody else. So they need to control everybody else in order to feel good about themselves. So if they're leading a project, for example, they know how to do it better, so they get people to follow them. And it's because they just cannot be okay if somebody else is leading. They have very fragile egos and they have very low self-esteem, and so they need to control other people in order to even feel remotely okay. And in this scenario, in this example of having a fragile ego or, needing to control other people, a narcissist will likely find places where they have implied authority. So like over a sports team, for example, or, as a coach. You will not usually find a narcissistic parent on the sidelines cheering on their children in games. They have to be the coach. And because if they're on the sidelines, then somebody else's interest is, being put as the center. And narcissists are not okay like that. So if a child is enjoying, a sports team, the narcissistic parent has to be the coach, because it's got to be about there's all the attention has to be on the parent, that parent who's the coach, who is a narcissist. And also the narcissistic parent, being on the sidelines would also create this other sort of uncomfortable place to be, because the child would be looking at another coach, someone else that wasn't the center of, like someone else is the center, right? Another coach. And so they don't want their children looking to another coach. So that's very uncomfortable to be on the sidelines watching their child in a sports game who's being coached by someone else. It's also uncomfortable, as I said, because that means the child's interests are the front and center that day and not the narcissist. And because there's this implied authority, then he has shored up the fact that people would be looking at him to control the plays and control what's happening on the field. And so you might find a narcissistic parent putting their kids in sports teams, even if the kids don't like sports. But again, it doesn't matter if their children like sports. The children are there to serve a purpose. And if they have to be on sports teams in order for that parent to be a coach, that's what they'll do. Because again, it's not about other people's interests. It's about what the narcissist needs. And they need to be in control. and so therefore they'll be in control of a sports team. That's just one example. You might find someone who wants to be in Sunday school as the Sunday school teacher, again, so that they're controlling everything. They're controlling the children, they're controlling the lesson and everything. That's, they just go to they gravitate towards places where they have this implied control. And reason number 4 why they need to control is because narcissists are abusers, and abusers are about power and control. And they view themselves as, the person that dictates what will happen, when it'll happen. And because they were abused as children, that's what they do to other people now. They abuse other people to feel like they're in control because they weren't in control as a kid. They have no other way to operate in relationships other than to control other people. That's all they know. And narcissistic abuse is about control. A lot of it is about control, and they feel like they can, abuse other people in order to kind of maintain that control. And I think that people become abused by narcissists based on some vulnerabilities. It's not their fault. I'm by no means saying that it's their fault that they become abused by narcissists, but the narcissist seeks out their victims because of some emotional vulnerability that they have detected. They spot it. They're like prey, right? They're looking for people who they can inflict that abuse upon, and they are seeking them out. And they seek out these people who are vulnerable in some way. A lot of times narcissists abuse children because children are vulnerable, but they also abuse people who they see, are just, a little bit fragile, a little bit vulnerable, and then they exploit those vulnerabilities. That's just what narcissists do. They control their victims, and they pick out their victims way ahead of time. So narcissists can be found in places where they can, where they can have this power. Sometimes teachers become narcissists because they can control. And I'm not saying teachers are all narcissists. I'm not saying that. But a lot of narcissists will find themselves in careers where they do have control, implied control over other people, because they need to feel okay. And that's the only way they feel okay, is when they're doling out this, abuse and control over other people. So those are 4 of the reasons why narcissists why they need to control. And there's many others, but those are 4 main ones why they need to control. And I'd love to hear in the comments some other ways that you have been on the other end of narcissistic control, and if there are other reasons that you want to offer the community. The comments really help other people, so do leave a comment below. And if you have a narcissist in your life or in a relationship with a narcissist, you'll definitely want to check out my video on how to recognize the signs of the discard coming. It's called Discarding When the Narcissist Gets Rid of You. And if you know the signs that it's coming, you can kind of prepare yourself. So if you haven't checked out that video, you'll want to do that now. And I'll leave it above and below for you. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.